It's the Aimster.
I don't know the email address.
Oh gosh.
So we'll put it in the show notes.
You had one job.
You gave me that job 20 seconds ago.
That's because I had complete and utter faith in you. I think I can find it.
I did.
Don't say what you think. Oh.
Being known podcast. Wait, being known podcast at iCloud.com.
That sounds right. But
yeah, it does. But could you say it a little quieter? Being known podcast.
Right.
Yes. I was saying it quietly because Pep was telling me not to do it.
Yeah, being known pod at iCloud.com. Being known pod at iCloud.com.
Well done.
There you go.
Well, you figure that's pretty good. I mean, this is only our 9th season, so I mean, with more practice, Amy will be able to get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Curt, I know that email was just rolling off of the end of your tongue there. Yeah, you do it for sure.
Yeah.
What you think, Aim?
Okay. So, you guys already said, "Oh my gosh!" So we got that covered. So we cannot escape suffering, and yet many of us live as if that is our only option, is to try to escape it, try to eradicate it. Mm-hmm. And so the idea, like you say, Curt, of being hospitable towards suffering, that idea of having a different relationship with suffering, as I was reading the first chapter, it was like, that felt like such a relief.
Oh, say more about that.
We kill ourselves trying to escape it, and we can't.
Yep.
So it's like, there's a different way. It's a hard way.
Yep.
But the other is hard too. Like we've talked about this before. It's the right kind of hard because it's fruitful. Yeah. So it was like, oh my gosh, I can take a deep breath because there's a different way. Mm-hmm. And then, Curt, when you said, I'm going to look at my notes because I want to get it right. Are we more deeply known by God and others in our suffering? Like to tag it within our suffering, like that's how we begin a new way. Like, and it's great or small sufferings. It's not like we all suffer. We've talked about grief. We experience grief every day.
Yeah.
And if we wait until we have a huge suffering, we won't know how to do it because we're not practicing it with the small sufferings.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
And it is amazing how in times in life where the suffering is intense, how things can become crystal clear. And how and hopefully in those times you have you're already somebody who's in relationship with people that you can share, that can help carry your burden and those kind of things. But it's amazing that that there have been times in my life where it's been intense and the God's presence and everything is just so tangible. And then we can go about our lives and forget about those things and that closeness.
I think I mentioned at some point, maybe in our before we started our recording today, the poet Christian Wyman, Wiman, and who in his book My Bright Abyss explores this notion of suffering as he traversed his experience with cancer. And he's had other things to say and to write about this notion of suffering. And I think, again, we are so, it's, when the poets get a hold of anything, look out.
Hold on.
Right? Because they find ways of saying things that circumvent all my defenses
I heard a quote the other day about poetry, and I don't want to interrupt too
Yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah.
Just a
Go,
very,
go.
very quick aside, in that, people think that poetry is a poet puts flowery language on top of things to make it, just seem more
Mm.
flowery. But in reality, what they're doing is they're distilling it down to the absolute essence.
Nugget.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's distilled language much more
Right.
than it's. Yeah.
Right, which goes against the grain of what we would expect, because I would think that distilled language would be linear, logical, make it
Mm.
crystal clear for me to understand. And yet, what poets do, it's like, as we often said, if the shorter your speech,
Yeah, I
like
would have written
like
a shorter
like
note
Lincoln, right? Yeah,
if I
yeah,
had more time.
right. Yeah, like Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, right? Whatever it was, however many few minutes it was that he spoke. But this is what poets often do, and they crystallize and distill, as you just said. And I think that when Wyman starts to now he writes about it in both with poetry, but also with prose. He writes about his suffering, and I think we are so immersed in our commitment to distraction, as you were saying, Amy.
Yeah.
So I am so committed to distracting myself from myself,
Right.
that so even to our activity, will you be able to name the places where you suffer? I have said, and I say this not with certainty, but with confidence. With conviction. I think this is true. That there is a sense in which, if we are not in touch with some part of our life, our soul, in which we are suffering, it may be fair to say that we have not yet, we are not yet fully following after the King hard enough.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that, I don't mean that unless we are, consumed with suffering, that we're not following Jesus. I don't mean it in that way. I mean, as we'll get, when we get to the later chapters in the book, this notion, like when Jesus says, "Come, if you want to follow me, come pick up your cross."
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't say, "Come pick up your Tesla." He says, "Come pick up your cross." There is a sense in which coming to him, to follow after him, necessarily is going to require me to notice all the micro moments. Amy, you said earlier, it was just really convicting to me. The micro moments of choices where I choose not to let myself suffer, even in the slightest way.
Mm-hmm.
I want the extra brownie. I want the extra brownie. When in reality, to choose to resist, I'm not going to have the extra brownie. There's a certain suffering, if you will. Now, people might say, like, that's not really suffering. But, like, I don't know what to do with big suffering, because I can't resist eating the extra brownie.
Right. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't resist the impulse to talk critically about this person that I had interaction with in the grocery store.
Right.
Or my spouse or my friend or whatever. Like, I don't know. There's a certain suffering that is involved if I'm going to choose to be kind when what I really want to be is mean.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There is, like, I'm all, and we will come back to this over, but I am reminded of the story in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, where Eustace, who has been the erstwhile bane of every other person's existence on the trip thus far, he's been turned into a dragon because of his greed, and then he has this encounter with the lion. And the lion asks, "May I undress you?" Eustace doesn't know what he's talking about. And then Lewis describes, right, with the claw, right, and how he tears one layer of scale after another. Mm-hmm. And the pain that Eustace undergoes. until when it's all said and done, and then the lion throws him into the pond, stripped naked of all of his protective defenses. And there is a suffering that goes into that. And I think that, and a freedom. Right? As you said, Amy, when we decide we're going to be hospitable to the king coming and stripping off everything, when I turn with if somebody's going to be with me, right? The king's with me when he starts. If somebody's going to be with me, we turn and look at the monster in the corner, Pep. We turn together. Let's go together.
Yeah.
Let's go look together.
It's good.
Yeah. It's a great start.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for all your insights, Amy.
Begun.
Yeah. Right on.
All right.
Until next
time.
Right, guys.
All right, guys. See ya.
Bye.